With the Invictus sale literally just being announced, I think like 2 hours ago, I figured it would be a good time to start talking about pirate ships. What are good pirate ships? What are good things to buy? What are things that generally work out? And I decided to start off with, since it's a military themed sale, I decided to start off with a pretty decent piece of military hardware. Once again, from a pirate point of view, which is the Retaliator bomber. You might think that doesn't make sense, but once you kind of get up to these loftier kill missions with Vaughn, you get into a place where you can one-shot your targets with torpedoes. And that's a pretty juicy place to be. If you wanted to be a pirate who went out there and just blew people up, instead of really worrying about stealing cargo, if you just wanted to have that heavy hitting ability where you could just maybe destroy cargo ships or enemy vessels from rival clans of pirates or anything like that, the Retaliator, when the target is significantly sized and also significantly unable to defend itself, and we'll get into that a little bit more in the future, the Retaliator or even the Eclipse are very interesting choices. Very, very interesting choices. And so you might be looking at that, and you may have seen me out in the Retaliator or other people, and you've gone like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting. I'm kind of liking this ship. There are some drawbacks that you need to know about that are specific to pirates only. And this is something that you really have to think about. The big problem, or the big inconvenience, I'll say, for a pirate operating a Retaliator is going to be the fact that Grim Hex does not sell torpedo reloads. None. Absolutely none. You can't buy different types of torpedoes here. So even if you were to kind of pre-stage yourself so that you've purchased both types of torpedoes, you can't switch and just kind of go and reload the other ones. So there are no torpedo reloads available at Grim Hex. Now, I call that an inconvenience because the truth of it is that as you're very well aware, with the current game mechanics, you can simply log out in your ship anywhere. You spawn back at Grim Hex and you go, oops. You go to the little, computer panel and reclaim your ship. So you could go out, fire off 6 torpedoes, have a bunch of fun, make a bunch of credits, and then just disconnect from the game, get your ship, log back in, get your ship, reclaimed, and then next time you log into play, boom, you got a ship with a full load of torpedoes, full load of fuel, everything. You're good to go. It's a pretty decent proposition currently, but heading into the future, this might become a bit of a logistical nightmare to supply this thing, because you can, even though it inconveniences me and it's something that would limit my capabilities, I can see the logical in-game reason for this. That being, of course, that if you were able to purchase such lofty and capable weapons of, not really mass destruction, but certainly ass destruction, the authorities in the system would not really be all that enthusiastic about kind of turning a blind eye to a place like Grim Hex. So you can kind of see the logical limitation there. Now, that could mean in the future that pirates will have to engage in a bit of a logistical train to gain access to torpedoes, or we may have to wait for Ruin Station and Pyro or Spider at some point in the future for those systems or stations to be implemented where maybe the supply is a lot more robust and something like this is a lot more sustainable as a pirate ship. But it's not really so much a pirate ship as like a criminal hitman, an ambitious hitman's vessel, something like that. But the Retaliator does come in the future with the ability to change out one or both cargo bay or both torpedo bays with a cargo bay. So it could technically be used as a bit of a pirate ship in the future, though there are no tractor beams like there are on the Drake ships, so there's going to be little inconveniences along the way. And whether those cargo bays are going to have elevators that drop down so you can load the cargo in, we don't know. There's a lot of things when it comes to Star Citizen, surprise, surprise, there's a lot of things that we just don't know yet, you know. And, and I mean, to be honest, I think there's a lot of things that CIG doesn't know yet either. So don't feel bad. Or feel worse, maybe. But so the Retaliator, I would say, as a moneymaker, as a pirate, because these missions have now become available, it's not bad. And I'm still pushing with it, and I'm still wanting to see where that ceiling is, you know, when the missions get to that point, when the rewards maybe get into the 20,000 or the 30,000. You know, who knows? You know, maybe 40, 50, you know, who knows what the limits are. So I'm eager to see how that all develops. But currently, the Retaliator is a pretty decent buy, and it does have the potential to present some problems in the future, but it is, I still think it gives you a credible threat. And you know, I've half mentioned the Eclipse, but the Eclipse is something that I think would be much more reasonable to acquire in-game rather than out of game, because I feel that the price point of the Eclipse, you know, I think relies very heavily on the ship's kind of pizzazz level more than its actual usability vessel. So I would argue that you can buy a lot more usability and a lot more income from a cheaper ship than you can get out of the Eclipse. Especially if you're a pirate, you have to think about efficiency. So I would say that the Eclipse is an interesting side ship, certainly, but as a main ship, almost most definitely not. I would advocate buy a Retaliator over an Eclipse if you could only get one. But once again, a bit of my opinion. So this would be kind of like a pretty decent raiding vessel with the potential to carry a little cargo in the future, you know, also provide a credible threat against capital ships that may encroach into your area or that may present themselves as potential targets in the future. The Retaliator certainly has a lot going for it. Moving on, the Drake Corsair, I would say, is probably going to become the quintessential pirate raiding ship. It's going to give you a lot more cargo space than the Retaliator would. It also uses traditional guns, whether they be energy or ammunition based. This is probably going to be a lot more sustainable as a pirate, a lot more viable of a choice. And so this is probably, like, if I were to say pick a single pirate ship as the best, or pick a single ship as the best positioned pirate raiding ship, I would say it's the Corsair. However, there is a drawback with the Corsair, and we do have to talk about it. We've talked about the virtues of the Corsair many, many times over. You can just look at the stats and you instantly know, look at the scanning suite for quote-unquote exploration, the weapons, everything. It is just a pirate's dream come true. But there is a drawback. And the drawback is that the loaner for the ship is the Constellation Aquila. So if you were thinking that constellations were going to make this list, I don't know what you've been drinking, but you should probably stop. And we do have to talk about this. The Constellation is literally the worst ship in the game. It is absolutely abysmal in every regard. And everyone's talking about, oh, hey, docking in 3.13. I was like, yeah, but it only works on the Constellation, which is the worst ship in the game. I literally, as an experiment, I took a Constellation Aquila out again to kind of say, well, you know what? It's energy weapons. Maybe we can kind of do some of these kill missions with the Constellation. Maybe we can find a place where the Constellation is good. Spoiler alert, no. It's just terrible. It is just literally awful. Like, the next mission that I got was for the 17,500 range was to kill a caterpillar. And after the first 2 shots with the Aquila, the guns overheated, and I just looked at it and why am I flying this over stratified mess? It's just terrible. It's such a terrible ship. You might actually, towards the end of this video, you might actually see some of the footage of me when I was first getting into the Constellation, and it was just it's front to back. Like when we look at a ship, we can generally say here are the good features, here are the bad features, and we can say that about a lot of ships. In the Constellation, they're all bad. Everything is just front to back terrible. It literally is. And that is the loaner that you get for the Corsair. The loaner for one of the best ships in the game is the undeniably worst ship in the game. And it is just it is just heartbreaking. So the Corsair, perfect. As close to perfect as you can reasonably assume. I mean, there are some minor quibbles that I have with the ship, but overall, perfect. As good as it can reasonably get. It's an excellent ship. It is going to be an excellent ship. But the loaner is the worst ship in the game. The Freelancer miss. Now, this, unlike the Corsair, is a ship that its greatest virtue is that currently it is flyable in game now. You purchase this ship, it is there. You're not stuck in that Star Citizen meme of constantly waiting for your ship to be built. And it is a really good ship. I would say that arguably, if you were owning a Cutlass and you were a pirate and all you had was a Cutlass, that this would be your next step up. Though step up is there, it's debatable because there are certain virtues to the ship, but there are also, while it does kind of step up in terms of firepower, not really all that much in terms of guns, because yet you do get gimbaled size 3s, whereas the Cutlass could only go up to size 3 fixed. It's less maneuverable than a Cutlass, and it's not as fast as the Cutlass is by about 100 meters a second when you're going full tilt, which is to say beyond SCM speed when you're just ripping it. Now the guns are located kind of awkwardly, so that can bring you into a situation where you can only fire 2 out of the 4 guns. So that is kind of an issue, but it does come with a massive array of missiles. Absolutely massive array of missiles. So you can really screw somebody up with this ship. Really, really easily. And so you can see it in like that rating profile. It would be a really solid pick. Now, unlike the normal Freelancer, this actually does not have more cargo space than a Cutlass. I think this is down to 28 SCU last time I looked, versus the Cutlass, which is at about 40, and the baseline Freelancer without all the military equipment in it is 66. Question mark, correct me in the comments below, double check before you buy. But the Freelancer miss is still a solid ship. I would honestly, I like the Gatling guns. I do have a soft spot for the Gatling guns, but ultimately I would probably change those out for something maybe a little bit heavier on the Alpha, though truth be told, DPS wise, the Gatling guns are pretty solid. If you were to keep 2 of the Gatling guns and get 2 distortion weapons, 2 distortion repeaters, that would probably be a pretty decent solution for chewing through a ship's shields and its hull. But it's debatable. I mean, we could pick scenarios and pick versions of the ship, or different builds all day and say this is better than that, but it depends in the end on the user and what they're using it for. So the Freelancer miss, I would say, is a solid pick. It's a solid pick, and price-wise, still, I believe, under the $200 range, though we'll have to see those sale pages. So it is pretty damn good. The only reason why I'm still kind of like, sometimes about it is the fact that, for just a little bit more, you step right into the Corsair, which is going to be, absolutely night and day in terms of firepower and capabilities over the Freelancer Miss. The only drawback, of course, with the Corsair is the horrific loanership that you get, which just is enough to make you want to quit the game. The Redeemer. The Redeemer, the ultimate memer ship. Everybody loves it, and nobody has ever had an issue with it or its creator ever. And the clamshell engines are just beloved by the entire community. The Redeemer is a ship that I would say is going to be solid, but in its initial version, you may notice that it is in production now. They are building it. Would I be all about getting this ship? If we had the facility, or we knew that the pilots could control the turrets, or if that mechanism had been implemented in the game already or was about to be implemented, I would be a lot more enthusiastic about this ship. There's a lot to love here, and there's a lot of potential in this ship, especially in that raider role. If you could slave those turrets to the control of the pilot, I'd be a lot more enthusiastic about this ship. But because that is an unknown, that is still a question mark, and we don't have the facilities anytime soon to either slave those turrets or stick NPCs in them that we can command, that sort of thing. Because that is the situation right now, I have to say that my enthusiasm is strongly dampened for this ship, because otherwise the strictly pilot controlled weapons would be 2 fixed size 4s or 2 gimbaled size 3s, which kind of puts it in the range of our next ship in terms of firepower. So just if smuggling were more of a thing, I mean, arguably this is more of a drop ship, and so it has some value there, and it opens up a lot of options, but technically you could make just about anything that has a locker and a gun rack a drop ship, right? Certainly CIG does. So a lot of potential here, but that potential is dependent on certain game systems and certain design choices. And yes, now in the background you can see me stepping into the horror show that is the Constellation Aquila, that will absolutely be in, like, I mean, if you own this, use this video as a reference to the ships that you should own, because this goes beyond just simple taste or theme or anything like that, or I'm going to use it for this or that, it might be good at this or that. It's just awful all around. Just accept the fact that it is just awful all around. Now, the Mercury Star Runner. I include this ship like the Redeemer because if you can bring those turrets to bear in the future, it's not going to be show-stopping firepower, but it's certainly going to be a lot more than it currently has, because the 2 gimbaled size 3s that it currently has could be best described as dainty. It's not a fighter. It's a runner. It's a smuggler, but with those added turrets, it could certainly be used in some very interesting ways as a supplement to other ships, certainly that are raiding, getting that cargo and getting it out of there quickly. It's still a solid pick. I still think that it is an absolutely solid ship. And if we could slave through a server blade those turrets to the pilot's control, or, put NPCs in there, or bring friends along, I think it would make it a lot more respectable. I think people would hold it in a lot more regard combat-wise if that were the case. But right now, currently, it isn't. So the Mercury Star Runner, I would say, is one of these ships that is going to be much more solid in the future. Currently is decent at certain things, but as a raider, not really all that much, though it does have that strong future potential. Now, I do have to highlight the fact that there are certain ships that I'm leaving out of this. I'm deliberately picking ships that have the potential or the ability to carry cargo, because that is probably going to be a significant part of your pirate activities in the future. is getting cargo. Now, going out there and doing kill missions is one thing, but eventually you're probably going to have to bring something back, or an opportunity may present itself in the future. And that's where these cargo bays kind of come in handy. That's why we're not talking about Vanguards and we're not talking about Ares in this video. We'll talk about those in a future video. But these are the ships that I think are just like the ships that, for a pirate, an all-arounder that has the ability to carry cargo, has the ability to go long range and raid, these are the ships that I would say have currently the strongest potential and that are still within the sane affordability range, though some of them are at the limit.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.